Hello, everyone, and welcome to Momentum Boost. I am your host, Adrienne Gold Davis, and I am thrilled to be with you all today. So, in Momentum, we always talk about what we call HP moments or higher power moments. Some people call them like winks from God, or as I like to call them, odd or God moments. Anyway, these moments can look different for all of us. And maybe a song follows you, into every store you go into, or maybe you hear a fragment of a conversation from strangers that turns out to be exactly what you needed to hear in that moment. And you can't help but laugh because we know that we are comforted by God who's speaking to us all day long. So this month at Momentum, we focus on the value of unity and mutual responsibility. And we'll often discover that God shows us our responsibilities in the world, not just by what we have, but also by what we need. And when we heed those calls, we can truly understand what we're here to do in this particular lifetime. But how do you know the difference between, say, a calling or a simple coincidence? Well, in today's episode, we are discussing how to recognize when an opportunity is tailor custom made for us. Because joining me today is Shera Dubitsky. She's a very funny lady, and she was called to a very challenging task. For 13 years, Shera was the director of support services at Sharsheret, where she assisted women who were diagnosed with breast and ovarian cancer. From a very young age, Shera watched her mother fight breast cancer. Her mother faced her illness on her own terms and with tremendous dignity and courage and honesty and fierceness and hilarity. Sounds like an apple tree kind of thing because Shera sounds an awful lot like her mother. Anyway, she did bring her mother's light into her work, and I'm personally fascinated by her self-described calling, as well as her decision to pay that light forward and to make sure that, women during impossible times have the greatest of support. And she takes that responsibility seriously. And her story, of course, ties into this month's topic of unity and mutual responsibility. And personally, I cannot wait to discuss this path that she took and to listen to that voice and to help others. Thank you. Please join me in welcoming Shera. Hi.
Hi, I got a little verklempt during that introduction.
That was some intro, wasn't it?
That was amazing.
I guess I should tell the audience, and I have to be honest, Shera's sort of my girl crush. I get one every now and then. This woman is phenomenal. You will see.
So nice.
Let's just get right into it because I don't want to waste a moment without your great wisdom. Okay, so you lost your mother at a very young age from breast cancer, which is traumatizing, and I would imagine has had a lifetime of manifestations for you in all sorts of areas. But when you had the opportunity to join Sharsheret, and I want you to explain briefly what Sharsheret is for those among us who may not know, did you actually think that this was a customized opportunity? How did you know that this was your calling?
Right. So I was 13 when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer.
Whoa.
And my whole adolescence, she fought the battle. And unfortunately, she passed away when I was 19. And when I went to get my doctorate in psychology, I remember being asked when it was time to go on internships what I wanted to specialize in. And I said, I don't know what I want to do, but for sure, I don't want to go into cancer. And I don't want to work with people with breast cancer. That was clear to me.
Man plans.
Plans. Yeah. So fast forward. There is a woman named Rochelle Shoretz, who was 28 years old when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And people were saying, oh, I have somebody for you to speak with. And they were introducing her to women who were in their 50s and their 60s. And she said, that's not helpful for me. I'm a young woman with breast cancer. I have young children. There's got to be other people out there like me. So she and this other woman ended up starting this organization called Sharsheret. And Sharsheret is a national organization for women and their families who are facing breast cancer or ovarian cancer or who have a high risk of breast cancer. And the focus was really on young women. Now Sharsheret has really grown, it's helping women of all ages, but at the time it was really for young women. And so she started this in 2001. In 2003, I had no idea who Rochelle was. In 2003, she calls me up and she says, so our kids are in the same pre-K class. And David said he would love to have a play date with your Sophie. Great. So she says, I'll pick up Sophie. I'm going to drop her off after the play date. Wonderful. So she brings Sophie back to my front door. And on my front steps, she says, hi, I'm Rochelle Shoretz. I'm Shera Dubitsky. So I said, listen, I know you recently started this organization called Sharsheret. It looks tremendously so important for a population that's not having their needs met. I said, I was looking through your things, and I noticed that you don't have a lot of things on for children, for parenting children. I said, I have my own personal story, and I'm a therapist. I'd be more than happy to volunteer. And on my doorstep, Rochelle says, okay, let's do a symposium. We'll call it Addressing the Needs of Children. We'll do it at Sloan Kettering, and you'll spearhead it.
Whoa.
And that was it. And I did that. And then I started to come on staff and work for at Sharsheret. And even though I'm not on staff at this point, I'm still on the medical advisory board. So in the time, I didn't know that it was customized for me. But looking back, I can see how the events led up to that. And it was a training ground for me to, in the moment, see this is actually leading to something else.
You know something, this really strikes me that, so part of what I was saying in the opening is that, often our needs, the things that are missing in our lives become the signposts for what we're ultimately going to need to do. But something struck me when you were speaking. This is a little bit off page, but I hope it's not too personal.
Yeah.
I was horrible between 13 and 17 or 18. I mean, I don't think I spoke 2 words to my mother. I just rolled my eyes mostly, and that it was horrible. You probably did not have the privilege, the opportunity to be a nasty teenage girl if your mother was that sick. What does a teenage girl or a teenage boy who are supposed to be separating, differentiating, and are usually difficult, how do you do? It's kind of like having a Holocaust survivor parent. You can't. How do you express independence when your parent is that sick?
So my parents actually wanted things to be the same in the household. That was very important to them. And so how my parents intervened with us before cancer continued afterwards. And so, like, for example, my mother hocked me all the time about cleaning up my room. You got to clean up your room. You got to clean up your room. So one day I came home from school, and of course I didn't clean up my room. I come home from school and I went to my room, and my mother had hammered with a nail everything that was on the floor where I had left it. So my clothing, my shoes, a book she did. And I said, are you crazy? And she said, well, you've been leaving it there. So I thought that that's actually where maybe you wanted it permanently.
Oh my gosh, I love her.
And I remember taking the nails out and whatever. So my parents really wanted us to have the same experience. So I did get mad at my mother.
Yeah.
And I also did feel guilty about it because I never wanted that to be the last interaction I had with her.
Right.
But my mom was okay with that, and she engaged that. And that's the advice I always give to the women that I work with. Just be who you are, right? That we can't control what our kids are going to remember about us and what they don't. And I think that, like, my mother would be appalled at the things that I do remember and the things that I don't remember. And that would be my advice to people going through things.
Wow. So, you said that this was a hindsight is 2020 moment for you. Is there any way, in your estimation, both as a therapist and as a person who has, devoted your life to recognizing these moments, is there any way to not have to be in 2020 mode, to be able to say, I am getting this message. This is not to me. This is for me. Can you explain that principle, that psychological, spiritual principle? And maybe there's a way to not have to wait 20 years to look back and say, aha.
Right. So I actually was on a Zoom call with Rabbi Daniel Cohen from Connecticut.
Okay.
And he said something that was mind-blowing for me. He said, what and who was the most likely match that God has made? The shidduch. What was the most unlikely shidduch that God made? And he said, the earthly being with the neshama, with the soul. So he said, you have this earthly being that's all about me, my needs, feed me, clothe me, take care of me, pay attention to me. And the neshama is really all about serving God. And how do we serve God? It's through our mitzvot, helping others. So these two, really are handcuffed for life and have to spend their lifetime figuring this out. Okay. And so one of the ways that I think about that in my own life is I remember when I was in college, I don't remember if you had this in your college, but the professor would create a test for us. And then the proctor would hand out the test with a blue book. And we would fill out the blue book, and the proctor would collect the book and bring it back to the professor to grade. And you had to be prepared at some point to maybe stand in front of the professor and defend your answer.
Okay.
And I feel like that's with God, that God says, I'm going to send you tests, but I'm not sending it directly. I'm going to send it to you through proctors. So proctors could be someone says something unkind. Somebody, you're in a tough situation. You're in a situation where you're asked to take action. Whatever the proctor is, that I feel like I'm going to fill out my blue book in that moment, because I know I'm going to stand in front of God and he's going to say, when I sent you that test through this situation or through this person that was challenging, walk me through your answer. And I always feel like I want to be able to respond and to be able to defend my answer with dignity and integrity.
Okay, so that's beautiful. And I hear that, and I hear that from the wisdom and the mind of a person who is psychologically sound and healthy. I guess what I worry about is that this is not something you would say to somebody else, right? This is something you say to yourself, because when a person is suffering, I cannot imagine that you are telling their Sharsheret clients that this is a test and that they have to fill out their blue book and that, the proctor is the cancer and that they'll answer for this, even though we know spiritually, this is the paradigm Jews believe. But I would expect that is something we say to ourselves and not to others. Is that correct?
It depends. People have asked me, why do you think God gave this to me?
Right. So what do you say?
So my answer to them is, look, we're not getting emails from God. So we won't know if we have the right answer. But I'm curious, what answer would feel satisfying to you?
Oh.
And so when they share that, then I say, then let's go with that.
That's brilliant. So what kind of answers would you have gotten from that?
So there are some women who say, maybe it's a test, right? And God is testing me. Or maybe I'm leading my life in the wrong direction and I have the wrong priorities. And now I'm realizing I need to shift like that. Maybe I've surrounded myself with people who aren't right for me. And through this process, I've met other people. Or sometimes people say, there is no answer to that. There is no answer to that, and nothing would feel satisfying. And I say, then let's go with that. Let's go with that answer. But if that's the case, then we need to shift from the question of why did God put this in my path to for whatever reason, this is what you're facing. So what do you want to get out of this experience, right? You can write your own narrative about that. What's your narrative? And so I think that those are the kind of, there's such a full range of how people respond to that question. And I think it's all legitimate because, again, it's tailored for each person. And I can't answer that question for them.
It's strange. So it sounds to me like you believe fully that every situation that comes to us is directly for us. Now, this is wonderful if you have a God consciousness, if you have, an idea, a notion that there is a higher power that is bringing this to you. But for those among us who are not at that level yet, there's a statement I heard many years ago that really sticks to me. It said, greatness is not what happens to you, but who you are in the face of what happens to you. Right. So how would you define greatness in crisis moments if you had to do it, say, without God consciousness? From a psychological perspective, what is greatness in a time of crisis in your mind?
In my mind? So look, when I went through this with my family, I was not religious at the time. So God was definitely not on my mind at the time that I was going through this. So I did go through it without God in my mind and in my heart. So I think that the best greatness is, I think, leaning into whatever you're facing, which was really how my parents decided to deal with this. That they said, we're going to face breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer. We're going to look it in the eyes and we are going to say, bring it on. And that's what we did. And we dealt with it very authentically. So that was kind of the way we did it in my family, is we were going to be authentic about it. And that we recognized that even though maybe we were doing okay, we could have hard days. That's also greatness. Greatness is also having hard days and leaning into that. Mm-hmm. And greatness is also having triggers and, saying, wow, that really hit me like a 2x4. Right. And leaning into that and owning it. And I think that the more that we can do that and really be in the moment, honestly and authentically, I think that to me is greatness, right? That to me is greatness.
So I would agree with that. So let's go back to the notion of unity and mutual responsibility. Let's first look at it through Sharsheret, through the unification of an organization that understands where people are coming from, and mutual responsibility as the ability to volunteer with an organization and to continue beyond and after. Many, many years ago, I lived with a cross-addicted person, and I found myself in a 12-step program called Al-Anon, a 12-step program. And I remember long after that relationship ended, I continued to go to those meetings because someone was there for me. And so I wanted to be there for somebody else afterwards. Mutual responsibility and unity in the moment of crisis is intuitive. But what happens after the fact? How do you hold on? How does one hold on to a sense of mutual responsibility, perhaps when the storm has passed?
Well, first of all, when I do know that people are going through things, particularly at Sharsheret and even with my friends, that people fall off the radar screen when the crisis is over. Huh. And so I actually put in my calendar, check in with so-and-so. And that goes at the beginning, week to week, maybe month to month. So even a year later, I still have in my calendar, give so-and-so a call, send so-and-so a text that you're thinking about them. Because that, to me, it's easy to be with somebody in the moment, but it's really afterwards that I think that people really feel that they really need the support afterwards. So for example, I would get phone calls from women 6 months after treatment, 2 years after treatment, 5 years after treatment. And this is what they say to me. They say, when I was going through it, it was awful. And so when I was first diagnosed, I was thinking, how am I going to get through it? But I got through it. Then I was thinking, I had surgery. How am I going to get through it? But I got through it. Then I had chemo. I got through it. So now that everything is done, it's hitting me emotionally, right? And now by this point, everybody has packed it up in a box with a pretty pink ribbon because they're thinking you're done. So she's like, now it's hitting me emotionally. And I said, because I think that we're wired, whether you believe in God or psychology or whatever it is, we're wired to not to take a hit at the same time, physically and emotionally.
Oh, tell me about that. Really, is that the case?
Yeah. So people report, like if you've ever been in a car accident, that time slows down because it's our brain's way of being able to kind of take a hit, and the body is going through something. And then we kind of, once we're finished with it, it kind of hits us. So I imagine this is what happens, that as the body is dealing with this medically, our psyche is on the sideline saying, are you done? Are you done? And then the body finally says, yeah, I'm done. And the psyche says, it's my turn. And suddenly the women are like, wait, that was my life? Like, that was my life? Like, how many times do we people say, I can't believe that I got through that, right? It's because in the moment, you just can't do it, right? Because we're dealing with other things. So I think it is important to stay with that afterwards. But I do think, going back to what I was saying before, is that I've trained myself at this point to look for those moments where I can step in. So, and I do feel like they're customized for me. So one example of that is my daughter made Aliyah. She lives in Israel. And I knew she was going to go to university for free. So for the $150,000 that I was saving on university here, I was thinking, I'm going to go back and forth to Israel as much as I like. And I did that. And so I had been in Israel, and she was in the army, and we had a great visit. I get home and she calls my husband and me, and she says, so I just was told that I'm receiving a Soldier of Excellence award, and the Tekes is going to be the same week that Pesach is starting.
Tekes is ceremony, yes?
That is the ceremony, correct.
Okay.
So I had already been to several of them, and I had just come back from Israel. And so we said, for sure, my husband's going to go. Get a ticket, you should go. So the question was, should I go? So I was thinking, I don't know. I was just there. And then I was thinking, right before Passover, it's very expensive, the tickets. And somebody has to be home to prepare us to leave Egypt for the Seders. So I'm going to stay home. So we buy the ticket. And I was spending a lot of time feeling like, was that the right decision? Maybe I should go. I was going back and forth.
Sure.
So I'm on this Facebook page for mothers of lone soldiers. And this one post catches my eye. So it says, hi, moms. My son has been in the army for a year. I haven't been able to see him. So Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is an organization in Israel, is sending me a round trip ticket to come and visit my soldier. But I didn't realize that I had to get from Mexico, where I live, to Fort Lauderdale, get a flight, stay over the night Fort Lauderdale, and then fly to Miami to catch my flight. So I didn't budget for that. So do any of you have any good tips on inexpensive flights or inexpensive hotels? So I wrote to her, private message me. So she private messages me, and I said, how much do you think this whole thing is going to cost you all in all? And she said, well, I'm not looking for money. And I said, well, I don't have tips. So this is what I have to offer. So we figured it out. And I said, I'm going to PayPal you the money. And she starts giving me blessings in Spanish. Oh. And I was thinking, what universe did I wake up in that I'm getting blessings in Spanish from Mexico? Oh. Right? So she said, do you want me to bring anything for your daughter? I said, actually, my husband's going to be there. But if you want to pay it forward, if you see a soldier at a pizza stand, buy them a slice of pizza and a Coke. That would be great. So it was amazing. And as I was watching this ceremony for my daughter, I was so filled with happiness and simcha, because in my mind, I was thinking that God said to me, I'm sending you a ticket. It doesn't belong to you. get it to the person that it belongs to.
Oh, man.
And because I was so satisfied with that answer, for me, I was able to be completely present on this live stream and feel completely happy.
Wow.
And I really feel like God orchestrated this from the beginning by having me go whenever I wanted to go. And suddenly I had this hard stop that I wasn't going. And I think because I was in that mood of feeling like second guessing myself, that post caught my eye. And then I was able to take action. So I really believe now I've trained myself to look for those moments every single day. We have these moments that I do believe we're being called to action. And in my blue book, I want to stand in front of God and say, so when you when you had my friend's kids sent me that they're doing this marathon in Jerusalem, to raise money, and 10 other friends' kids are doing that, I'm thinking, okay, so I'm going to give in all these instances because I feel like you sent me this email and I am telling you my answer in my blue book is, yep, I did it. I did my call to action.
So wait a minute. So let me just make sure I understand. Essentially what you're saying is that an HP moment is not just random. You have a role in it by recognizing that it is an opportunity. So when Hashgacha Pratit, higher power, odd or God, whatever we want to call it, when something comes to our attention, that we need to assume that it is tailor-made for us, and that when we act with mutual responsibility and intention about the things that come before us, you get to feel like you felt watching that live stream, which is that all of that waffling back and forth was because the real answer hadn't come to you yet, but that you have to seize the moment, if you will, carpe diem. The difference between it being random and coincidental and having a God consciousness about it is that you are saying, if you see it, it's for you. And it's interesting because I remember reading a post, a meme on Facebook years ago. It was a Rebbe's comment, and I can't remember who it was, that said, if you see something broken in this world and it's appalling to you, then it's you that is broken. Right. Because that is there for you to repair.
Yes, I believe that. I love that, by the way. And I can't wait to go back to this recording and write that down. I absolutely love that. I do believe that. I believe that there are things that are specific to our eyes, and we shouldn't think somebody else is going to do it. Somebody else is going to take care of it. I really think that for me, if my eye catches something, then I'm taking action in any form of way. So, if I was only getting one email from a friend's kid about doing it, let's say I would give $100, but I know I'm going to get several more. So I'll give 18 to this one, 18 to this one, 18. So it still leads up. I don't have to feel the financial burden of that, but I feel like I'm going to give X amount anyway. I'm just going to spread it out differently because each email is a call to action for me. And I feel like we have these opportunities all day long, and they don't have to cost anything. A lot of these things are, if you see somebody, even if you see somebody you don't know, who may be confused, or who may look lost, or who, here's an example. There are times I've gone to a simcha, to a wedding, or to a bar mitzvah out of town, and I don't know anybody there. So I have the personality where I can just go up to somebody. But I know that when I go to a simcha in my community and I see an out-of-towner who's by themselves, I go over to them immediately. I introduce myself and we start talking, because I know what that feels like to kind of not be part of that. And so that's not a moment that's going to cost me any money, but I know what that feels like. That to me is a customized moment. I see it, it caught my eye, and I'm going to go over and sit with that person and chat with that person and get to know that person. So we have opportunities all the time for these kind of things. And as a result of that, you're right, I end up feeling like that's where I feel like my earth being and my soul have found our common place.
Oh, you are too much. If I loved you before, I'm so deeply in love with you now, I can't bear it. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I know that Sharsheret means like necklace, connecting things that connect, right? And this notion of connection, your entry into that may have been the difficulty of being a young woman dealing with a mother who was struggling with breast cancer. But I have no doubt that your mother's neshama watches you with tremendous pride and is grateful at the connections, at the Sharsheret, at the link in the chain that you have continued to keep her soul alive through your goodness and your humor and everything that's special about you. Thank you, Shera, so very, very much. Wow.
Thank you. I'm really, even for saying that, that means everything to me. So I appreciate that you said that.
Well, I just feel for certain. So thank you again. My goodness. I told you.
And everybody go out there and find your moments.
Amen.
Amen.
Wow. How fabulous is she? I'm telling you. Okay. So again, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you want to listen to this over and over. There's messages for all of us in it. But please remember that from myself, Adrienne Gold Davis, and all of us at Momentum, that whole chain of mutual responsibility and joy, that as we learn and grow together, that the highest form of wisdom will always be kindness. Good night, everyone.
I've got 1,000 questions coming from deep within. Wanna cut through the clutter. I need to know that my next move matters.